should we all just go around and say who we are? You all know me, but I'm Jamie, and I am the Assistant Director of Imagining America in Syracuse, New York, and collaborating for a long time with Roadside Theater Appleshop.
Okay. My name is Josh May, and I am the new Communications and Marketing Director at Appleshop in Whitesburg.
My name is Zhivko Iliev, and I'm the Web Community Coordinator at Roadside Theater, and I'm based in Northern Virginia.
And I'm Bill Cleveland, and I am a musician and writer, and I run the Center for the Study of Art and Community on Bainbridge Island near Washington, near Seattle.
Hey, I'm Vijay Matthew. I work for HowlRound at Emerson College in Boston.
Well, thank you all so much for making the time for our first pitch meeting in the community cultural development field, which was hatched, as some of you know, at a Virginia Tech gathering on communications, documentation, and technology last month. And so the purpose of the meeting is for us to experiment with how we can bring content, digital content about community cultural development to relate it to current events, to expand the distribution. So in terms of an agenda, we'll be under an hour. And I proposed in an email that we might try doing 2 rounds. And people can pass and we can go around a couple times in each. And that the first round would be where we each shared examples of successful digital content that we linked to current events. And then in the second round, we would all popcorn the different current events that are coming up in the next several months, and then spontaneously try to brainstorm the different kinds of new content we could develop for these current events. So how does that sound for an agenda?
Sounds good. You're gonna have to repeat when we finish the first assignment, you're gonna have to repeat the second one when we get into the second round.
So the second round would be that we brainstorm current events, and then we do another round of pitches on those other events.
Okay, great. Cool.
And we can each share screens if what we want to show each other are examples. So if that makes sense, unless someone, would someone like to go first? Or I'd be happy to jump in and also show you the share screen function.
Go for it.
Cool. So tell me when you see my screen.
I see it.
I see it.
Yep.
Great. So one example is a blog we did on roadside.org, A Lifetime of Struggle, Reflections on the 50th Anniversary March on Washington in August. And Dudley Koch, Artistic Director of Roadside, authored it. And one thing we heard from people was that they felt like it was one of the first times they saw Dudley as the author give a more personal account. So we heard a lot of success from people hearing a personal involvement about how a news hook like the 50th anniversary of the march, hearing that personal involvement was positive. And we distributed it to, especially targeted to participants who were planning and getting ready to attend the Free Southern Theater event in New Orleans of about 100 people who were coming together to think about 50 years of the Free Southern Theater in existence, which was the theater wing of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee at SNCC. So one surprising thing that happened was that when we posted Dudley's reflection on the march, we had some flurry of comments on Facebook, and we're just getting roadside.org up and running. But it was really helpful to have a Facebook exchange, which then we brought over onto the blog. And what we found was that the Facebook exchange, people brought in new points. So Harry Boyd actually then brought in this whole aspect about Bayard Rustin's role in the March on Washington and the importance of building grassroots institutions. And so we found the news hook really helpful for sharpening our thinking about the content that we were so familiar with, and then how it could relate to the future. And then lastly, one thing we didn't have ready, but if we could do it over again, is we've been digitizing all of this archival footage from Roadside. And so I'll play you, 10 seconds of a play that Roadside did that was actually linking issues of race and class. So we hope that people who were not connected to the community cultural development field could see, the excitement of using performance to social issues. So that is my example.
All
And
right.
this,
Great. I thought you had taken my entire computer over.
Hey, Jamie, was that in October of last year, or just this past year?
it was the end of August.
End of August. Okay, because there's well, let me just share my screen. I can show you something. Maybe it's not a full story, but let me see if this is anything related. So let me go. Let's see. Do you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so this thing happened, Free Southern Theater's 50th anniversary in New Orleans with Junebug. This is not at all related to what happened in August, right?
No, well, it is, because it's the same time period. So the August event was a national event, and then the Free Southern Theater has been doing work for 50 years. And many people at this event, which shout out to HowlRound for live streaming it, that was amazing. A lot of people referenced Dudley's blog as, part of their thinking about the march 50 years ago.
Oh, okay, cool. And so yeah, this was on HowlRound TV, and it was actually where like HowlRound TV with all of its projects, it's where we train the organization to live stream themselves on the channel. So very much a shared platform. And so yeah, I think I remember I forget exactly who I was speaking to at Junebug, but we helped them get this up on HowlRound TV as a live stream and then a permanent video recording of that 50th anniversary conference. Okay, cool. So
I'd be curious to hear some stats about how many tuned into that live stream.
Oh, okay. Well, I can pull that up. If someone else wants to go, I can look that up.
Cool.
Anyone?
I'm actually trying to find my thing.
Your dog ate it.
Well, I can quickly show something that I wouldn't call it it's not exactly a current event, but it's actually, I guess, an event that within the community of participants in HowlRound, it is a current event because there's a critical mass of people just talking about it at the moment. And so let me just explain what that is. So I'll just share my screen again and show you what I'm talking about. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay, so so this week on HowlRound is this series called Race and Representation in American Theater. And it's a collection of several blog posts and what we call journal articles, which are longer pieces on this topic. And this is all coming from, I believe it was last summer, there was a production of Jungle Book in Chicago, directed by Mary Zimmerman. And there was a lot of discussion at that point about her interpretation of Jungle Book, and the question of how do you represent the other or another culture for your own culture. And so just this week there have been all of these posts that you see on this particular topic. And so for us it's a current event in terms of it's an issue event that we had the time, or this group of people had the time to spend time to construct these kinds of opinion pieces and essays and thought pieces on the subject. And then another way that we've activated a lot of participation and conversation about it is through a Twitter chat that we just had this afternoon. And I can show you that. And it was one of the writers in this weekly series who was the moderator for it. And then it involved a large number of people just talking more about the issue. So it's basically an event that we consider it's a conversation event that's happening all week. So I don't know, Jamie, if that fits at all in what this topic is. But I couldn't actually think of what we do as documenting or disseminating current events.
All right. So, am I still there?
Yeah.
Good. There you are. All right. So how do I put my screen on here?
You click on share screen down in the bottom menu.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, what do you see?
I still see the oh yeah, I see it.
You know what that is?
Oh, that's cool. What is that?
That is a gross representation of all of the participants in a 4-day community design build process in San Diego that basically turned a dangerous vacant lot into a community gathering place with over 250 volunteer participants. So this is a really interesting program called Gephi, which is an open source graphic visualization piece of software. And I'm at the beginning of doing this, and one of the reasons I'm showing this to you is that we had a sort of the leadership of this and the funders of this program. We had a small group meeting online, and I showed them this as a representation of the hidden network of relationships that had been spawned by this dusty, crazy, sweaty event that took place at a road end in San Diego. And there are ways you can manipulate this that I'm not going to go and do now because I'm in the process of actually changing the metrics on it. But it can show you, intimacy. It can show you times of relationships. It can show you organizational affiliations. It can show you post activity, all kinds of stuff like that. And they were speechless. And it was only about 12 people, but sharing this as a kind of dynamic representation of an event that had already occurred, but reminding them that every single person represented on this network was now an active resource in service to future community events, completely changed their idea about what they had actually supported. So.
That's really cool.
So now, how do I stop dominating your
I think maybe you click
Oh, there
share.
it is. I see it right there. Stop share. There it is. I'm back. Thank you. This is great. I like it.
So how will that be shared with a broader audience?
At the end of the month, I will have hopefully finished the draft report on the entire thing. And it will go to the San Diego Community Foundation, who will then decide what to do with it. My recommendations will be to get it everywhere. But they're my client, so they're gonna basically own it. But this Gephi stuff is mind-boggling in the way that it can translate relationships into a sort of graphic, visual, visceral sense of connectivity that is not automatically apparent, particularly when you close the curtains on a major event.
And is this a web-based application, or is it something you install on your computer?
Install it on your computer, you download it. Yeah,
Cool.
it's open source, so it's there for you to play with. I've also got this, which is if you're not familiar with all this stuff, nodes and edges and all of these other technical terms, it's good to, their training stuff is horrible. But this book is pretty good.
So could we use it to track, let's say the different web platforms that we all represent? Could we show a visualization of how the content is related?
The place that it gets used a lot is mapping of social networks, of digital social networks. So absolutely. And it can really take a lot of data. So, you can get thousands and thousands and thousands of nodes and then parse it out in different ways. And I'm only just learning how to mess with it. It's got lots of really interesting stuff attached to it that scares me.
Josh or Z, any examples come to mind?
I can go ahead. Let me try to share my screen. I'm kind of afraid something's gonna happen, but oh, that makes sense. Okay. Share. That's weird. Share screen only. Can you guys see this?
Oh yeah. Roadside. Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So I recently wrote a blog about, so I'm from Bulgaria. I've lived half of my life in Bulgaria. So that's where the accent comes from. And they have their own version of Occupy right now, because country is in a very bad position. It's the mafia controls the government, and it's very apparent because it's a very small country. So those connections are apparent to the people, but they can't do anything. So what they did was they occupied Bulgaria's, one of the best universities. Just a group of students occupied it, borrowing a lot of the methods and the ideology, which was from the Occupy movement. So what I did was I took those events happening right now in Bulgaria, and I placed them in the context of Roadside's work. its theory of change is that the effective grassroots organizing around social issues begins small. The basic unit of such organizing is the individual discovering through experience, reflection, and study of his or her own truth of the issue, then testing and developing that truth in dialogue with others who also have the knowledge. Basically, this is what the students in Bulgaria did. They, through a certain action, they were able to expose a certain part of the government, and people agree with them, and it turned into a whole movement with a lot of people. So basically, they set the foundation for citizen journalism. They themselves are reflecting these events, and they're not letting the media, which is controlled by corporations, twist what's going on. So what we have here is me trying to relate an international story with the work of roadside theater and with what's happening over here. So it's a lot of layers going on, but I'm not sure if I'm expressing this very clearly. I hope it makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense.
Show us the art. Scroll up.
Oh yeah, and that's really cool. I emailed illustrator from Spain. His name is Rafa Alvarez, and he agreed. He let me use his illustration, which I find amazing. Can you see this? I guess the zooming doesn't work. It's basically a family watching TV, and the TV just eats the boy, I guess, a member of the family. Now, there's a lot of things that, a lot of paths you can take from there. You can start discussing the way the internet, it's kind of trying to do the same thing now. Everything's becoming more digital. So the same corporations that are controlling TV stations are transferring to the digital space. And, it's just a matter of time that they try to implement the same propaganda techniques that they're implemented through traditional media.
Well, your post made me so excited to realize the strategy that we're hoping to use in the next year at Roadside, which is employing guest editors who are under 30 and from different sectors who can write on their experiences and connect it to the archive. And I felt like yours was such a great example of that, to bring in Occupy Bulgaria.
I guess my question from there is, how does that lead to actual physical connections with people? How does that leave the digital space and transfer into conversations and actual physical connections with people? That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, actually, I had an experience last weekend that was really instructive. I had been in Minneapolis, and I came back, and I had to turn around like 3 days later and go back to teach the Creative Community Leadership Institute. So this is a 6-month institute that we do in Minneapolis with 25 folks across multiple sectors for basically arts-based community development training. And in those 3 days, my back went completely crazy, and I couldn't walk. And so my 2 other faculty members undertook to take on the institute, and I became a laptop screen. And I went back and forth from being a laptop screen to a projection. And the institute is run in circle. Okay, so we're always in circle. So I was a laptop screen on a chair in a circle, and so I experienced for the first time things that I had always done in person, how they were taken, how they were consumed, how they were translated through the digital realm. And I did exactly the same things, and I cannot tell you how dramatically different the reception of what I did was. It was as though I was a one-dimensional. I wasn't a human being. I stopped being a human being. It was really really amazing, absolutely amazing. So that whole question of how the digital connects to the physical and the other way around is become really prominent in my thinking about you know, what's the sequence, how do you make the connection, how do you deepen a connection, and it's right now it's sort of living as a semi-trauma with me.
Yeah, well, right now we're just like bobbleheads, you know, like the way I see you guys. You know, it is interesting.
Yeah.
But it's better. It's a step in the right direction from Facebook communication, which is you're just text and an image. At least you're moving, you know.
Absolutely, and I mean, actually, Jamie, to me, often it is the context. You give people a challenge or a question, and you can sort of semi-forget that we're dealing with flat people, that there's actually more dimensions there. But I think it's something that will always be an important challenge, you know, for people doing this kind of work, particularly when it comes to the generation of trust, which is so critical often in the work that we're all involved in.
And then it's such dangerous territory to bring archival material of performance to the digital. So I'll just show you real quick. You know, there are parts of Junebug Jack that it feels so late 80s, early 90s. I mean, that was spoken word. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really interesting. So are these unmediated, or is there any text that goes with them, or some kind of context setting stuff when you encounter them?
I can probably answer that. Well, a lot of the time, you know, I've been working for Roadside for about 6 months. A lot of the time, we would receive footage from somewhere, and it would have no background information. And it gets me really mad, because here it is, this historically valuable content with no information of who is in the recording, where they coming from, what's the framing, what's the place. I have no idea. So I basically have to, you know, I don't know, just stalk people and, you know, kind of guess. I have to Google search what am I seeing here. So it's funny, because it's the exact opposite thing of the dangers of the digital world, which is you're recording something that has actually happened, but you give no framing to it. So it's just, you know, it's a good idea that it's recorded, but there's no information that comes with it. But yeah, I think we do a good job at framing these videos and, you know, giving some description of what's going on, you know, transcribing and all of that.
It's important.
That's very important, yeah.
And maybe if we think about users not as the general public, which really there's no such thing as a general public of this broad anonymous user, but if we think of it, you know, as the student who's in the grassroots theater course, who's reading the script of Junebug Jack. I mean, I read it 8 years ago when I was a student, and I never knew, I don't think I realized that certain parts were sung in that rhythmic spoken word 90s way, because it was just words on the page. So at least the digital is a supplement to that kind of learning.
And it also shows, yeah, like you said, people from my generation, it shows what actually happens when people meet each other, because we might not have an idea what happens because most of our lives are spent in front of a computer. You know, we don't have an example. And we need an example. I think that's a big point, a very important point, is that it gives us an example of how what happened, you know, it gives us at least a visual example of what could happen, but in our own time. Yeah.
So Josh, would you like to share anything in this round?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're talking about here is context, right? Being successful with any repurposing of archival material depends on what's happening at the time and connecting with that. And so, yeah, I'm in my second week on the job here, and so I can share something that's in progress, not a completed project yet. But I'm guessing you all have heard about the water disaster that's ongoing in West Virginia. Are you all familiar with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's actually an Apple Shop film that was made about 25 years ago that is unfortunately way too relevant to the situation right now. And there was a chemical spill there right in the same area, in the same valley in West Virginia. And the film is about just that whole incident and then the community's response and dealing with the companies. And so just in this past week, I've tried to do a push with the movie. I can show you all my screen here. Okay, you got that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so here's the film, and this is a POV posting about it. It was a POV film, came out in 1991, and you can read a little bit about it here. But so in the past week, we've uploaded this film to Vimeo, posting on Facebook and social media, and then there's been some media response too. This is a Namadi website. There are just so many parallels between this film and what's going on right now that people are talking about it because they're talking about West Virginia. And I feel like we're just starting to get to tap into the response here, and I'm trying to interface with community organizing groups in West Virginia. I come from a background of working all across the region on environmental issues and a whole number of things. So I have contacts there and trying to work out some screenings and other ways of using this film to show that this isn't just a freak accident or a one-time thing. It's a history of exploitation of people, and I think the film is really powerful, and there's a powerful message in that. And so I'm working on a push and sending it out. I've sent it out to tons of people this week and waiting on responses to come back. But I would be open to your all suggestions about how to interface better digitally. I feel like I'm better at using media with on the ground and coming from a community organizing background. But I could use some advice on where to put it on the internet and how to use the video itself. You know, it's a full hour film, so it's not like a 5-minute video you can share on Facebook. But so I got to be creative about that. Okay, that's my piece. Any thoughts?
Well, I guess the question is, how do you get videos and work that's a product of months and months of research and it has a lot of substance to it? How do you get people organized over that? And how do you get in a dialogue with people by using that and not using like a 5-minute fast food type of video that's sensationalized the whole thing, but really using something with so much research.
So my first thought is that, I mean, your impulse, which is, which I think is, I mean, typically when a disaster hits, the feeling that happens is that the powerlessness feeling of powerlessness comes from the sense that nobody could understand what your experience is like. That and the actual linking of multiple events in history, not only from the victim's perspective, but also looking at the relationship of the event to the power structure that exists. So what you're talking about is the pattern of a corporation basically abusing their power and being negligent over and over and over and over again. And the only way we're ever going to get traction on these individual incidents is doing what you're trying to do, which is link them all so that people understand it's a behavior that is chronic rather than an act of God or some big accident.
Yeah.
Well, these examples were so great. In the interest of time, I'm going to propose that we move to round two, and maybe we won't go all around, but first, round two, part A is, let's just all throw out some of, what do you think are the important current events that we know are happening now and in the next couple months? So for example, I know April is, the launch of the War on Poverty 50 years ago. And I'm already seeing a lot of content about what does the War on Poverty mean for today. What are other things on your radars?
Interesting.
I'll have to say I live in a pretty regional framework right now. And so there's just a lot of federal stuff coming down for this region in Appalachia, from the White House, from state leaders, and a lot of it's around the war on poverty. But, you heard the president in his most recent speech talking about income inequality and this whole thing. So I think it's going to be a big issue in the coming year, just in a lot of different ways.
So the two that jump out for me are actually the income inequality thing. To me, anytime there's a national conversation, it's almost like it's automatically dead. When it comes from Washington, it's like the mute button or something. It's like and so the question to me is, how does it get translated to the hyper local level, so that people can actually connect it to their own story? That's the first one. The other one is water, California water in this case, but it's basically, as often is the case, California is a bellwether for a global issue that will dominate everything we do for the next generation, which is that we have squandered a pretty important resource, and the systems we have to deal with it are completely inadequate for it, and there is no critical mass of consensus about how to deal with it. And actually the power in the water sphere is ironically so dispersed that there is no there, where you have municipalities owning water 500 miles from where they are and controlling what happens to that water. So it's, to me, it plays out in many ways in the same way that income inequality plays out, is that those people with resources are going to be okay, and those people without resources are going to be on the short end of the stick.
So one big issue, I'll see if this thing works, this chat thing, stopping the Keystone Pipeline, because Obama needs to make a decision, I think, in the first half of this year. And this seems really vital for actually the future of the planet, really. And maybe, I don't know if that's an overstatement, but
No, it's not.
because of the amount of carbon it's going to be releasing, and just the quantity of stuff, and just the extraction process of getting the petroleum out of tar sands. So this seems really vital, and that has a policy, like governmental policy to that has huge, long-term impact on all of us. And maybe it does seem maybe the people can influence the US government on this one particular policy decision, possibly.
Yep.
It's actually maybe a doable thing.
So I've heard, so we have the environment, the economy, and I guess I would add healthcare. And then, of course, as you know, some states have decided not to extend Medicare, which, when the Affordable Care Act was passed, it was passed with the intention that states are going to be able to expand it, but then the Supreme Court decided that it's up to the states. So Virginia, where I'm living, decided not to do that. But I know many people who kind of fall into the gap where they can benefit from Medicare, but it is not going to be extended for one reason or another. And many of these people are my age, so younger people, I guess. So that kind of connects to the issue, which is an ongoing issue of, we don't hear the younger people talk on TV, in the mainstream media. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm imagining all this up, but I follow the mainstream media, I follow the other online media, but we just don't hear the opinion of younger people and how important decisions affect them. We hear generalizations about the millennials and how, I guess different facts, how they can't find jobs, or they're tech savvy, or they're self-important, or whatever. It's mostly tabloid stuff to sell magazines, but we seldom hear young people who are affected by these issues and why they're affected. So these are my two issues that I bring to the table.
I'll add one more to the chat, which is in September, the United Nations is having a world conference on indigenous issues. And I think there's an important connection to make around cultural equity, and that, many in our network cite Article 27, Section 1, that links cultural equity to being a human right. And I think it will be important to draw out the intercultural work, especially for Roadside, that Roadside has done with the Zunis in New Mexico.
Yeah, that Zuni project is pretty powerful long-term relationship that I don't think enough people know about it, because it's a slow deal. It's slow motion.
Well, we hope it'll help. We just got the CD, all the audio posted on SoundCloud, and the actual beautiful book about their partnership digitized. And we're just going to give it away. We're just going to post it on the site and open source share it.
Fantastic.
So in closing, anyone want to share some reflections about how this call went in terms of connecting community cultural development digital content to current events?
Well, this may seem, sort of is a tangent, but actually for me, one of the most important things for me is how a call like this actually translates to the things I'm doing. So that training program. So all this roadside theater content, like the 50th anniversary of the March on Washington and the HowlRound stuff that you shared, Vijay, that's going to go right into the laps of folks in Minneapolis who are part of the training program. So I'm just going to pass it on. And because it's so relevant to the kinds of stuff that they're doing. And I was inspired by everything I saw on here. It was fantastic.
Well, Bill, I'd love it to be a circle where, you know, you passed it on and then we heard from them back about how it related to their experiences. I feel like too often, you know, the distribution's only going one way, and interactivity and participation is so important.
Yeah.
Hey, can I share something really quick? And it's something that it'll take just a second, and I'm really excited about it. So
Yes.
I'm sending a link. It's called Flock Society. And what that is a free, libre, open knowledge society. And basically, it's the government of, and I may have spoken about this earlier, it's basically the government of Ecuador wants to figure out how to leave neoliberal capitalism altogether. Leave it behind for wealth generation that is for the commons, that's commons based, and that wealth that's accessible to everyone. And starting with the creation of knowledge. And so, I mean, that's the kind of the big idea, and this project is just starting right now in Ecuador. And
What's it called?
Fun, Flock Society. You'll see that link. Do you see the link I sent in the chat there?
It's FLOK Society.
.org.
.org.
Yeah, and it's a very exciting thing because it's really the only country in the world that is actually saying, you know, and actually doing something about saying that capitalism, free market capitalism, and privatization of everything and everyone, of every idea and of our natural commons, our natural resources, of knowledge, of intellectual property, real property, that is just not working, and that has created, we've seen 400 years of that, and how it's created such a disparity in who has wealth and access to wealth and resources. And so they actually want to re-envision their society altogether for the 21st century, where it's a commons-based economy that can benefit the most amount of people. So there's ways to participate in this. And if you go to that website, they're looking for various people to do all kinds of different things, like including research. And so this may actually be really relevant to you guys because there's some certain research streams that they call it, that they're interested in getting people's input on, and in a very kind of open, collaborative research method. And they have a forum and a wiki that they're doing this on. So it's really worth checking out and seeing how you can plug in, because I'm pretty sure that all of your guys' work and the knowledge that you have would be very beneficial to this project, and helping, you know, this is kind of a project that's piloting in Ecuador, and I'm sure will probably spread many other places. And the cool thing is it's the government that's actually saying we want to do it. Now the contradiction is that Ecuador is also licensing petroleum rights to drill to like Exxon and Texaco in order to pay for a lot of their country to get revenue. So, you know, there are contradictions happening, but they're doing something incredible also there. Yeah, so that's it.
Any last thought, Josh, before we hang up? Oh, you're on mute.
Okay. I just wanted to thank you all for all your insight, and this is very beneficial, and just the exchange we are flat, but it felt pretty multidimensional and visual.
Thank you all so much. Let us know via email or now if you feel so strongly, if you'd be interested in doing this once a month with we could open it up to others.
I can see that being useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I like
Tell
it.
people that we all had life-transforming experiences.
Okay, then I will see you all in the first week of March.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you, Jamie, for doing this.
Thank you, Jamie.
Thanks.
Thank you.
It was so much
Bye.
fun.